Hello Year 10, welcome to your topic on coasts. So for the next 5 weeks you will see a video appear and each of the lessons will be a different sequence within the topic of coasts. So for this lesson you are going to need a pen and pencil, lined paper and your fact book. This first lesson is all about coastal processes. So during this activities, we are going to be looking at what different types of waves occur along our coastline, and does the wave erode the coastline or transport and deposit material along the coastline. For our first activity here, pause the video and see if you can describe the similarities and differences between these two contrasting coastlines. So, waves provide the force that shapes our coastline. Waves are created by friction between wind and the surface of the sea. Stronger winds make bigger waves. Large waves also need time and space in which to develop. So large waves need the wind to blow for a long time over a large surface area of water. The distance over which a wave has developed is known as fetch. So the largest waves need strong winds and a long fetch. The water in a wave moves in a circular motion. A lot of energy is spent moving the water up and down. So waves in deep water have little energy to erode a coastline. However, a wave enters shallow water, it is slowed by friction with the seabed. The water at the surface, however, surges forward freely. It is this forward motion of the breaking wave that causes the erosional processes that we will look at later. There are two different types of waves, and these can either build or destroy the beaches. So our first type of wave that we'll be looking at is a destructive wave, and just like that term destructive, these waves destroy beaches by taking away sediment, also known as winter waves. That's when we see them most often. The other type of wave that we'll be looking at is a constructive wave. These waves build our beaches by depositing sediment onto the beach. These are also known as our summer waves. Destructive waves are waves that have a weak swash and a strong backwash. So a weak swash is the forward motion, and a strong backwash means that water pulling back down the beach is really strong. So it pulls sand and pebble back down the beach when the water retreats. And this means it causes erosion to the beach. And it's why they're called destructive waves, because they remove material from the beach. They are often steep and high waves that are close together and crash down onto the beach. If you were counting them, they would be coming in very quickly, up to 15 every minute. Another name for them is plunging waves, and they are ideal and perfect for surfing. If you pause the video here, make a copy of this diagram. Don't forget to add your labels. So as we saw on the previous slide, those destructive waves cause lots of erosion to our coastline. One of the types of erosion is hydraulic action, and this is where water is forced into cracks within the rock, and this compresses the air inside. So when the wave retreats, the compressed air blasts out, and it can force the rock apart. Another type of erosion is called abrasion, and this is where loose rocks, called sediment, are thrown against the cliff by waves. It wears the cliff away and chips bits of rock off. Attrition is where loose sediment knocked off by the cliff by hydraulic action and abrasion is swirled around by the waves. It constantly collides with other sediment, and so gradually it's worn down into smaller and rounder sediment. Lastly, another type of erosion is corrosion, or also known as solution. This happens when seawater dissolves materials from the rock. It happens along limestone and chalk coasts with calcium carbonate is dissolved. If you pause the video here, could you perhaps think of some creative diagrams or pictures that show each type of erosion? So the other type of wave that we're looking at is a constructive wave. These are waves that have a very strong swash and a weak backwash. So remember, the swash is the forward motion, and this time that forward motion is strong, whereas the back motion is weak, the backwash. So they're known as constructive waves because they build up the beach with that strong swash. They push sand and pebbles up the beach and leave them behind when the water retreats because the backwash is not strong enough to remove them. They are often low waves with longer gaps between them. As they break, they spill up the beach, so they are also known as spilling waves. They come in at a rate of 6 to 8 every minute. If you pause the video here, make a copy of this diagram and don't forget to add your labels as well. So the waves transport material, and they transport this material in 4 different ways. The first one is suspension, and this is fine sediment that is carried as a suspension in the water, and it makes it look really muddy or murky. Another type of transportation is solution, and this is dissolved material, so you can't really see it, and it's carried along in the water. Another one is saltation, and this is small pebbles that's moved around when one pebble hits another, causing it to bounce. This bouncing sets up a chain reaction. And the last one is traction, and this is large pebbles and cobbles that are rolled along the seabed. Some of this eroded material, this eroded sediment, is transported out to sea, but a lot of it is carried along the coast by a process called longshore drift. If you look at this diagram that's on the screen, you can see that waves approach the beach at a slight angle. As the waves break, the swash, the forward motion, carries material up the beach at the same angle as the wave approached. The wave approaches the beach in the same direction that the wind is blowing strongest. And in this country, the prevailing wind direction is southwest. As the forward motion, as the swash dies away, the backwash and any material carried by it falls straight back down the beach under the influence of gravity. So this means that the sediment, the material, is moved along the beach in a zigzag route. When longshore drift transports sediment away from one part of the coast, it reduces the size of the beach and leaves the cliffs and shoreline exposed to further erosion by destructive waves. In an effort to preserve the size of beaches and protect shorelines from erosion, lots of local councils build wooden fences called groins. If you happen to go to the seaside anytime or have a look online at places like Hunstanton, you'll see that they've got wooden groins on their beaches. The groins trap the sediment and stop it being transported along the coast. However, by solving the problem in one place, groins just move it further along the coast somewhere else instead. Because less material is transported along the coast to build up beaches, locations further down the coast suffer more erosion as a result. Pause this video here, have a look at the longshore drift diagram and see if you can come up with some creative ways to show how longshore drift happens, or perhaps how those different types of transportation take place. Well done, Year 10. You've reached the end of our first lesson on coasts. What we'd like you to do now is to make sure that you study your fact book for this lesson and learn all of these 4 facts in preparation for next week's lesson.